Good day. Greetings, Hermina.
Greetings. How are you, Doru?
Well,
Father Doru.
Oh, yeah. I have one daughter indeed. Yes, it's great to see you again after a while we keep in touch via email and all sorts of professional interactions, especially via the journal of EASCAST, where you have been serving a number of times as a reviewer.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's good to have you somehow back, because we did something, and I'll get to it in a moment. We had you presenting at the conference, and my YouTube channel, AIOCS, or the Australian Institute for Orthodox Christian Studies, still has that video. Okay, now, so friends, for whoever will be watching this recording, it is my privilege, my joy to host today Dr. Hermina Nedelescu from California. I understand that that's a different country from the rest of America, given that you are the largest economy.
Yeah, I think it's the 5th largest in the world.
Yeah, wow. Amazing. I didn't know that until recently with all these political debates.
Yes.
Okay, so as my custom goes, and I know that some viewers are usually upset because of my introduction, so I'll try to be as quick as possible with this. Just to point you to where you can find another recording with Dr. Hermina Nedelescu on this channel. Perhaps you see at the playlists, there's this one, Religiously Human in a Techno-Scientific World. This was a series of seminars, a 2-year series organized by the Sydney College of Divinity and EASCAST under my chairmanship. And Hermina presented a seminar paper there, Uncovering the Invisible Universe of the Brain at the Crossing of Neuroscience, Art, and Theology, which is actually what inspired my idea of inviting Hermina to speak again to. And now, if I remember correctly, you are also present in a different playlist. Is this it?
One of your seminars, which dealt with
conference. Well, this is the seminar. So this was the what I presented was a seminar. But where's this? There's another. Should be another. Maybe this one. I don't remember now. There should be another playlist, but I forgot. Oh, maybe it's on the website of EASCAST. So let's not waste time. But there's that conference we had last year, the ANZATS conference. It's an annual event organized by the Australian and New Zealand Association for Theological Studies, I think. Yeah, and you presented there too. I thought I had it here, but it's not. Now,
yes, it was around 4th of July 2023.
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah. So
because it was 4th of July, people were celebrating fireworks, and I was giving the seminar for you because you guys are 1 year ahead.
Indeed. Yeah, we Australians are so insensitive with you Americans. Okay, and this is Hermina's website, where you can find information about herself, about her research, outreach, and artistic science. So this is a very interesting concept, artistic, yeah? And you can see some of her work as a scientist and an artist. Yeah?
Oh, that one I have here.
There you have it. Yeah.
I have that piece still.
Yeah. This is artwork inspired by Hermina's research, and she'll be talking to us a bit about her research.
Yeah. These are dendrites.
Dendrites. Now, this is another side to to her activity, while she's definitely a scientist and a researcher, she's also heavily involved in, let's say, the world of international orthodoxy. And this is her portrait by the AIOCS Women Association in America. It's an association of Orthodox women, promoting women, and she was the woman of the week.
Yeah, they do this really nice thing where they highlight the work of women, and there are many women, not only me.
Wow.
It's really lovely. They provide such a summary and bring to light some of the work that Orthodox women are doing around the world.
As Orthodox and as professionals.
Correct.
Yeah, so this is a beautifully written profile. So those who would be interested in getting more of Hermina's activities and life, there you have it, with her family.
I'm happy to hear that. I will have to tell the person running this, Pat Butanev, that you like the style of it. She does a really good job. She interviewed me. She does a really good job with every Orthodox person she's interviewing.
I know, and she's very passionate, and yeah. So sometimes she has to wake me up to comment on the profiles, AIOCS women
Good.
on a weekly basis. Sometimes I wake up, some other times I play dumb. There's so much to do. Okay, this is another profile as author on the famous blog Public Orthodoxy. And these are some of Hermina's contributions there. Yeah, including when was this, the Forgiveness Sunday? Was it this week or this year or last year?
It was this year. Yeah, it was an honor to be asked to deliver a sermon. Telly Papanikolaou asked me, so I prepared, actually over-prepared. He told me, I think, in 2023 at the end. I prepared that whole time. I went back, read about forgiveness in the Hebrew scriptures, in the Talmud, and went just everywhere in the not only in the Hebrew scriptures, but also in the New Testament, and then combined it with what we know in neuroscience-informed psychotherapy of today about forgiveness. So I merged those three literatures, those three texts.
And that was a very powerful sermon, if I remember correctly. On that occasion, I made a comment on Facebook or whatever it was.
Yeah, thanks for plugging them in Public Orthodoxy. It's nice because they publish all sorts of things.
Yeah. This is something that is more recent, I think, in terms of...
this is my newest line of research.
Yes, Hermina's activity and involvement. Well, how do you call it? Social justice, in terms of taking the side of women, especially in church settings, who experience or have had experienced abuse.
Yes.
And yes, you are very present. I noticed there are some videos available on the internet, and
yes, I'm really excited about this work because I'm also merging it with some work in the lab where I will be, because this behavior is actually predatory behavior at its core. So I'm doing some work there, experimental work. But yes, this is the newest work that we're involved here. You know, the Bible is all about justice as well.
Indeed. Well, now the viewers, I'm certain, have already gotten the idea that there are many facets to this lady. Orthodox woman, scientist, activist, artist, and a spiritual person. And it's quite difficult to set on a certain topic. Hence, I apologize already to Hermina and the viewers if my zigzags through this conversation would be sometimes, I don't know, confusing. But the idea is I want us to
You
make
could
sense
say
of.
they are tangential, but so were the comments of Maximus, the confessor. When you read his work, he's got these tangential
Oh, yeah.
ideas, but brilliant.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, because you can't reduce life to one aspect of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's great. But not many people dare to try to embody all these various aspects of life into their own experience, their own work, um, their career, and so on and so forth. So we have a Romanian-born scientist and Orthodox Christian who studied in Western Europe and the United States, who is a researcher in the United States, currently does theological studies at Berkeley.
Yeah, in my free time when I can.
In her spare time.
Class here and there for the last 4 years, and now I've run out of classes, so I have to finish with that some degree. But I think I want to continue on doing that, because I think with any new topic, like for me, theology is still quite new. I think it takes at least a decade in that new area to really even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, before making a dent.
Yeah, yes.
True. And as I said, an activist very much involved in the church's life, in which, of course, gives her the perspective of an insider into those aspects that are perhaps questionable, not perhaps that downright questionable, and perhaps less known to the broader public. Now, I would like us to begin this conversation, although we are a few minutes into it, but the better part of it, so to speak, by well, share with me, the viewers, your story first and foremost as a scientist. Yeah? Because I believe that this is a very interesting part of your journey, which actually open many doors for you. You know, there are some sciences that perhaps block the person in a certain corner of the galaxy. And from that far, far away point, they cannot interact with other disciplines and other people, you know. But that's not your case.
Yeah. So I'm a neuroscientist. I'm a trained life scientist, but a neuroscientist where we deal with questions of emotions as well. So it's not just a non-physical phenomenon. So because I say that there, you can imagine how if there are limits to what I can do in the lab, you can see that I'll probably look at spirituality within certain, communities, religious communities. So then that's my connection to theology. So I wanted to say that first. But yes, I think at the core of it, I really am just a scientist, a very curious. What makes one a scientist is a very curious person. So all those things that you mentioned about me are at the most fundamental level, just driven by a curiosity. So even with the more recent work, the injustice against women in the church, that I didn't really grow up knowing much about it. I was very protected in Romania by my parents. I didn't really go to church because, as you know, you grew up there as well. The churches were empty, I remember, except on big holidays, they were full. And then my mom would say it's not so safe. Maybe I don't, I'm talking about the early 80s. So all of the 80s I was there. This is what I remember. I didn't get communion. I would not get communion every Sunday. Okay. That sort of thing. So I grew up in this very secular environment. Now I forgot where I was going with that. Can you repeat your question? Because I want to stay on track.
No, but there's no track here.
Okay.
It's just a matter of, trying to start somewhere. And I suggest that you begin with your scientific expertise, your research, which opened for you many avenues in life, including, not isolating you from real life, from the problems that people face today, from, I don't know, emotions in general, and strong emotions associated with trauma, like, for instance, in the case of victims of church abuse.
I got
So,
my train of thought.
so
Why I went.
it doesn't matter whatsoever. Whatever you can share is well received.
Yeah, so I caught my train of thought. So what I was trying to say is that I am very much driven by curiosity and finding out the truth. And that is so with the neuro work, for example, when I grew up, I didn't know of these abuse situations, including sexual abuse in the Orthodox Church, until more recently I became aware. So, but at the core of it, and then I started digging more and more and more. At the core of it is I'm interested in discovering what the truth is, to see the depth, the breadth of this phenomenon. And that's the same with what I do in science. When I'm looking for something in the brain, I have a question, and I'm again searching and discovering, pushing the boundary to discover this truth.
I remember
It's the same for me.
I remember listening to you, but see, this is the significance of your work as a researcher, because you can engage other aspects of your interest and life, not only career, from the viewpoint of your scientific expertise. And I remember listening to you. Was it the seminar for the Theology Research Network, which I'm chairing for the SCD, or was it the conference last year? Don't remember now. But you mentioned some research done from the neurobiological viewpoint, in terms of the outcomes, let's call them physiological. If it's not the right term, please correct me. The physiological outcomes or impacts of trauma experienced by persons that went through abuse within the church, sexual abuse, Yeah.
Yes.
So
And spiritual abuse as well, which often precedes sexual abuse. And this is your colleague, Rocio Figueroa, who talks about this as well. There is spiritual abuse that takes place. And my eyes have just more recently opened, because there's been more discussions about reviving the female diaconate and these things. So I did present work showing, there was actually a research study by Patricia Homan. She's a researcher based in Florida. And what this study did, it looked at a national database that we have in the United States of different Christian churches. And these women, so what she did is she looked at congregations which are inclusive, where women are allowed to participate in decision-making governing board decisions, as well as religious participation, such as giving sermons, such as the one that I did, recently. I only did one. I was only allowed to do one. Anyways, so in these inclusive congregations, she compared with congregations that rejected women from such participation in the decision-making process or in the sort of religious liturgical participation. And then the third group, so there were, three groups to compare. One was inclusive congregations, exclusive congregations that rejected women, and just women control, non-believers, okay? So what was the readout was these women self-reporting on their physical health. And it showed that women in the congregations that were inclusive reported higher health scores. So they weren't as depressed, less anxious, whereas women in the exclusive congregations reported very poor health, and even more poor than those who do not attend congregations. And that was the kicker, that it is better to not attend in some cases than attend a congregation where makes a woman feel worthless and, does not allow the desired participation. And then I corroborated that with laboratory experiments that were done in the neuroscience center, context. And you'll have to look. So this presentation I presented with the St. Phoebe and Axia women, and you joined. Thank you for joining. So that's available on there to look for those citations. But what they found in the laboratory setting, this was a controlled laboratory experiment where they put participants, they had two groups. So one group, they induced physical pain on the participants by putting their hand, I think, in very hot water where it was painful. And then the other group of participants were actively excluded from desired participation of a game. So they felt, their self-worth was decreased. And what they found is that similar brain regions were activated as reported by MRI imaging, the bold signal, in these both brain regions that process pain. So the point was that either physical pain and emotional pain are processed by the same neural circuits. And there are some theories to this for evolutionary purposes. I can say that pain receptors were there before our emotions. So when emotions started to develop in the species on Earth, then why make a whole new pathway? You can, use this pain neural circuits that are already there. That is the theory. But that's what I presented. And I think that's profound. And when I saw that, I thought, oh my God, what are we doing to the girls in our churches when they are at adolescent age, when there is significant neuronal development going on, when they are so darn good at this point to pick out hypocrisy, because that teenagers are very smart. Teenagers, we used to think that they are problematic. They are actually undergoing a phenomenal brain development, and they are not stupid or problematic. They are just undergoing a lot of prefrontal developments, and they might make risky decisions, yes, but you have to understand what's going on at the neurobiological level, and they are very good at picking up hypocrisy. And I think at that point, and even before, but also after, developmentally, when we reject desired participation to those who want to participate, I think that's abuse. That's maltreatment. At least if you look at the WHO, the CDC, and you look at the definition of maltreatment, you can get some insights that what we are doing to some of the girls is maltreatment, and therefore would be constituted as abuse, spiritual abuse. And I want to reemphasize that oftentimes that precedes sexual abuse. It's something interesting as well that I want to say, because I was speaking to our friend recently more about this, John Crisevgis, and he says sexual discrimination conceals abuse, a lot of types of abuse. And I thought, absolutely, that's what it is.
So the church, the church isn't as inconsequential as most people would say, but in the, let's call it the dark side of things, regardless of how we might hide behind the finger that we are doing just what our tradition is about, and that's how our tradition prescribes things to be done. In reality, we affect people's life even by not doing, I don't know what, tremendously evil things to them. Not in an explicit way, we still affect people's lives.
And I want to add something about that, because I was in this mysticisms class I took, because we talk about spirituality a lot, you and I. There are we had a discussion once about rules, right? You have these rules to help people be devotional and praise God. But ironically, these rules that we make about no girls in the altar and whatever else we pull out of the sky, these rules diminish people's experiences of God. we diminish sometimes their spirituality and even cause harm, like we just talked about. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up about the rules are there to, they're there supposedly to help people connect with God, but ironically, it actually diminishes our experience for in some cases.
Yeah, and it's perhaps not so much the rules as it is how they can be manipulated for the benefit of a certain, let's say, group within the church, the ruling, let's call it, echelon of the church. And I would bring about what St. Paul says to the Romans, so that this is an old story for the church. It's already the middle of the first Christian century. And there were debates in the Church of Rome about the law, how they called the Torah at the time, which wasn't it could have been taken in a very legalistic way, as most churches to this day take it, or as Paul suggested, it can be taken in a spiritual way, where the so-called commandments, prescriptions, and so on and so forth are but pointers towards a spiritual way of life that leads to the maturation of the entire body of Christ, in other words, the Christian community, regardless of who they are, what they are, and as he says in Galatians, in Christ Jesus, in other words, from the viewpoint of a renewed, mature community of believers, there's no longer male and female, rich and poor, Greek and Jew, and so on and so forth.
Yes, that is the path of spirituality, isn't it? That is the point of it. I'm so glad you mentioned this manipulation of rules, because I'm very pro role of women in the church, okay? But think about it this way as well.
Same here.
Think about it. I want to bring some, yes, but you know how you said about the manipulation, it can be manipulated both ways where it looks positive as well. Let me give you an example. Like by allowing women to participate, okay, to hold candles, this kind of participation, it can also help gain more power for the one who is in charge as well. So if women don't actually have the capacity to be on equal parts in the decision-making process, then this can happen as well, right? Because we're talking about little girls holding candles. So you can say, some clergy will say, or bishops will say, okay, I'm allowing them, see, but that can be actually manipulated as this, like it helps his hero power. So I think about it in both ways. It's a different point and much more difficult to see the other way, where they are allowed, but then because they want to be in charge.
Yeah, and this is precisely why early on, when this kind of imperial shape of the church emerged in the era of Constantine, so-called saint and great, you have this tremendous phenomenon occurring. The best of Christians flee the established churches, and not to become so-called sectarians or heretics or something. No. They took to the desert and the mountains, men and women. Why? Because they realized that something was lost with this imperial schema of the church, where Roman androcentric mentalities were imposed upon Christ's church, which was supposed to be an open field for the maturation, like a nursery for the maturation of all members, regardless of their gender, their age, their ethnicity, culture, social status, and so on and so forth. And so those who already noticed the signs of abnormality in the church occurring in the 4th century took to the deserts, men and women. And there they realize their potential in sometimes in hermitages, as in utter isolation, but most times in small communities of like-minded people. And the virtues and the wisdom that we see usually in the sayings of the desert fathers, the same virtues, the same wisdom is encountered in the sayings of the lost desert mothers, as Father John Chrysaorghis calls them, because we have lost their memory. We have forgotten, after centuries of male-centered church establishment, we have forgotten that men and women started together and they flourished together in Christ up until this imperial schema determined the introduction of new rules, a new playbook, which favored males against females.
Yeah, I read the work by Father Robert Taft about how the Byzantine Church began to form from the 4th century with these processions from the imperial court to the church. And even at that time, you had the whole community join these processions, and then it became collapsed to the walls of the church, and then restricted only to males. I wonder if people read the history. I don't know.
No, they don't. And perhaps now this doesn't even matter any longer. What matters is the fact that we live in a very different time when science has made a dent, giving people new insights into the workings of the human being as an individual member of the species, but also in relational societal terms, and why not in an environmental perspective, where the human being wakes up to a complexity of which the human being wasn't aware, the human community wasn't aware up until recently. And this is where voices like yours are so important, even when they are heard, or perhaps even more so when they are heard within the church, so that we realize that certain ways that we consider traditional and established and consecrated are actually detrimental on the human level.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I do feel the direct challenge on me as a scientist and an Orthodox Christian, because I don't subscribe to scientism, which is that science explains all things, right? So that is, I definitely feel the challenge, and why I embarked on this road. And, thanks to Gail Wolashak, who sent me to the GTU to study some theology. I do feel the challenge to speak up.
And your studies in theology equip you with the proper concepts and ideas, and let's call them approaches, to address these matters within the church that otherwise go unchecked. And it's not a matter of, just revolutionizing stuff for the sake of reforming the church, which actually it's a must. Yeah,
happening anyway.
the church as the new creation is always in renovation. Yeah, we are the new creation.
I was gonna say, I see a change.
To reinvent ourselves again and again. So traditionalism is the problem, but not the tradition of the church, because the tradition gives us or equips us with certain tools that are actually quite compatible with the thinking that you scientists are accustomed to by way of the rules of your trade. But what's interesting? Yeah, go on.
We're okay with change, and we are okay with being wrong once new evidence, new reality is revealed to us. And that's a sign of humility, by the way, saying I was wrong, and now, now that I know what I know, this is how I'm going to go about it. So I think it's worth dialoguing.
Oh, it is. And as a scientist, you are and a theologian, you are well equipped to remind us of the fact that the same humility is expected from us, God's people. Just the other day we celebrated in the churches, the Orthodox churches of New Calendar, so the Byzantine churches, the festival of the ladies' death,
Or,
Domitian. It's death, her death.
yes.
Yeah, it's her
Yes,
death.
it, I was wondering, it's so sugar-coated, calling it a Domitian.
Euphemisms. It's her death. Yeah, she died. She died and was brought back to life. Yeah, that's it. But she died. Yeah, she didn't go to sleep. She died. Yeah. Okay. So the lady died as a human being does. Yeah. But what's interesting about that celebration is the fact that the apostolic passage, the letter that we read, has nothing to do with her, not explicit anyway. You need a lot of fiddling with the text to go from the idea of the text to the festival. But the passage from Philippians 2, I think verses 5 to 11 or so, speak of Christ's humility and glorification. So if Christ gave us through his own earthly life an example of humility, being who he is and embracing humility, the form of a slave, says Paul there, we are supposed to think alike, and this is the beginning of the passage. However, after all, yeah, think the way Christ thought. The mind of Christ be your mind. So humility and self assessment and reassessment of what we do, how we do things, is embedded in the Christian psyche, but we have forgotten about it. We just speak about humility, but humility has become one of those empty words that we keep, I don't know, blurting towards the world.
Right. And it's been confused with being a people pleaser and kindness. I think it needs to be redefined. Humility needs to be redefined.
I can literally, if anyone is humbler than Christ, then, well, give me that text to eat it. But see, this is the thing. Your science, your scientific expertise, your scientific experience being imbued by this culture of, well, I might be wrong, therefore I should be on the watch, this is something that we were supposed to have as Christians, and we don't. This is why it's so important to have people like you, like Gail, you mentioned her earlier, scientists and theologians to work for the church, within the church, but to be also listened to by the higher echelons. That's the problem. But perhaps before you are heard by the higher echelons, it's very important what you already do, and your sisters with the Axia and Phoebe and so on and so forth, so that you reach the grassroots.
Correct.
So education is very important, and it's one of the most significant ministries that you have to undertake, because we are ignorant, oblivious, ignorant, stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, so education and just raising awareness. And some 10 years ago is why I decided to start doing some artwork. Because I thought there was already, I was beginning to see a big gap between the general public and what we are doing in the laboratory. We're doing really complicated things. I needed at least, we train for decades, okay? We train for a really long time to learn all the molecular mechanisms, to learn, like, I have to both be good at genetics, I have to know how to do neurosurgeries, I have to know how viruses work because that's what I use. And I said genetics, because I need the molecular tricks, I need to know the anatomy. So there's all of these components and activity of neurons, all the equipment to use, physics, to be able to use a microscope, you need to understand some physics. So there's all of this time and training, that we put, that the general public, I was beginning to see such a gap. of understanding of the papers we publish and, manipulated pop science. And I thought I'm going to start showing at least the structure of the brain and start speaking about the function whenever I can. So that was what led me to the artwork. I don't do it that often. Probably I have one show or discussion per year. That's all I can afford because in terms of time, because my science work comes first. But in December, this December, uh, oh, you're showing, yeah. I'm actually uh connecting with other science artists in the city of San Diego, and we will be presenting at a major cellular biology. This is a neuron, a cell in the brain. I will be presenting along with them at a major cellular biology science conference. And, yeah, so we do these kinds of things. Or I presented at the Civic Center in Del Mar here, where I can engage with the general public and say, this is a neuron and an axon. And when I showed that photo to someone in Tokyo at a different show, she said, "Is that a protein?" And I thought, no, that's a cell. And I'm saying a protein is inside or on the surface, and you cannot see it at this level. So it's very simple questions like that. And I think through art is more palatable for the general public to bridge some of that gap that I'm seeing right now. And I think that's happening with Orthodox Christians as well, and any other religion for that matter. There's a major science gap between the scientists and the general public.
Yeah, and your artwork, and so by the way, what I presented earlier, a few slides from Hermina's website. By the way, you can buy
Yeah.
the productions. Well, I wasn't meaning you. I was
Times
meaning
that you've never
you.
heard.
Okay, so promo. Um, and that artwork is inspired by your research, by what you find via microscopes and experiment and so on and so forth. I wonder, I'm into the contemplation of nature, regardless of its scale, microscopic or macroscopic. Uh, I have less access to your microscopic world. I'm more drawn to the macroscopic reality.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
think,
reality too is a different scale of reality. It's yeah.
but I think there's something fundamentally inspiring and inspirational in your art that visualizes your science. And one of the things that I believe you mentioned in the seminar you presented for the Theology Research Network is the fact that looking at these neurons that intersect, that hold hands, so to speak, and so on and so forth, is the image of a world of connectivity. Can you speak to connectivity as a scientist and a theologian with a view to, let's call it, practical applications in terms of the spiritual life or the life of a society and so on and so forth?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that question, because much of my ideas about interactions in the world at every level of complexity come from what I know at the cellular level, how I see cells are working together, cooperating together. And I think you cited St. Paul for me once in one of my papers. I think St. Paul somewhere says that we are all working together in God's field, right?
Co-workers and that. Yeah, and it's the image of the anatomical or whatever, the somatic analogy. We are cells and members and functions within Christ's body.
Interesting. Yeah. So yeah, much of these ideas come from my direct experimentation at the cellular level, and connecting that with behavior. So I think, and others think as well, that there are important interactions at every level of complexity. So I speak a lot with, for example, Robert Russell, who's founded the CTNS in Berkeley, the Center for Theology and Natural Sciences. He's a physicist by trade. So he's speaking about atoms interacting with each other, particles. There's interaction at that level. Then, you know, you go to the next level, say chemistry would be the next level of complexity. There's chemical interactions there. And all of these give rise to something, to existence. And then you go to the biology level, say basic cellular level. There's interactions there, give rise to function, important functions in our body. Then you go into the neurosciences. Now we're talking about environmental stimuli becoming encoded into these neurons and influencing behavior. So there's interactions there. Then psychology, interactions between us, human beings. And I think these interactions are so critical because it is what reveals God or a divinity, you know. Yeah. And then you can go beyond that, populations of cells and, you know, into the galaxies, which I'm not an astronomer, so I'm not an expert there, but I was just trying to draw this level of complexity, how interactions are key to existence. They give rise to something compared to nothing.
Existence is interaction, is synergy, is cooperation, things coming together. It's like, you know, I like game theory, and apparently our modern societies are mainly based on the zero-sum game pattern, where we kill each other to prevail, to succeed, to be successful, you know, and we see this in politics especially, but also among neighbors, you know. Whereas in life, from the whatever subatomic level onwards, including on the level of the cells and the neurons you are working with, we see a different kind of game at play, the non-zero sum game, where things hold hands together in order to build something. Now,
and those are the successful ones, because only through that cooperation is there success in a particular function.
but it's a success for more than one participant in the game. That's the non-zero sum game idea, where we either succeed together or we lose together. But what matters is that we are together. Whereas now, let me go back, because we don't have much time left. We don't want to bore anybody. Although I'm certain that this one conversation won't be ever accused of boredom or boring people to death. So we have to do it again, or a sequel.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the point that yeah.
No, later I want to show you this, maybe even Kahal.
Yeah. You mentioned this book during the seminar. Yeah. Okay. So just a moment. The thing is, we learn from science that things hold hand together. That there's no way for a certain member of whatever layer of reality we are talking about to flourish by itself, in isolation, or by destroying everyone else. Of course, we know viruses do a lot of stuff, but they don't do that in order to destroy. And sometimes they stimulate our immune response, whatever, and so there's still a gain. But apart from situations
Some are
that
bad,
are,
like
yeah,
some viruses are bad, like rabies. You know, if you don't treat it,
yeah. So
get in trouble.
apart from these situations that might discomfort us, you know, so that's judging anthropocentrically. In reality, everything else cooperates. Yeah. Now, the point I want to make is, and to return to that aspect of your more recent involvement in social justice for women in church. From a neurobiological viewpoint, what does sexual abuse look like? What
Yeah,
is it compared to reality that you consider under your microscope?
yeah. So I haven't yet looked at postmortem brains with sexual assault histories, but that is my plan. That's where I'm going. I will be looking at that. But my collaborator from Baylor University, who's a clinician, has interviewed nearly 200 subjects of clergy perpetrated sexual abuse. And David Puller is his name there. He's on the leading edge of at least adult abuse. The others focus on child as well. He showed categorically. So here's what it looks like. There is, yeah, the damage is profound. Some don't survive. Okay. Some don't survive. They commit suicide. Others, about nearly 40%, and this is in a manuscript that's about to come out that he wrote, nearly 40% of them develop PTSD. So they have a startle response. They can't sleep, just anxiety, these kinds of symptoms. Of those, another nearly 40% turn to self-medicating with alcohol and other drugs of abuse. And now we're in my field of research as well, as you know. So it's, yeah, this is what it looks like. About half of them lose their faith because that relationship with God was manipulated when when a priest like yourself, what I'm not going to say, let me not go there to put a hypothetical example that way, but the relationship with God is manipulated. So a lot of them, half of them lose their faith. They certainly lose faith in the institution. So this is more or less the big things that it looks like, but it absolutely impacts a person's physical health. Yeah, it's
And on a
not
long
good.
run, I think on a long run, this affects the church itself.
Absolutely.
Because it becomes like a rotten organism that is unable to maintain the health and the balance of all
Yeah.
its components. Um, and
And it's been going on and it has been rotting it. This is the new reality that I've realized according to our research, just looking at the number of cases internationally in the Orthodox world, in Australia as well, and in everywhere. It's just a covered up secret, but it's harming thousands of people because there are collateral victims as well, if that makes sense. So it is affecting the church as a whole. And we don't speak about it openly as an Orthodox church. We have not acknowledged that this is happening. Uh, I was just at a conference about this in Houston called SNAP, where there were many advocates, and there was a detective there who had prosecuted many religious leaders. And he said that there's a wrong myth to think, because often people think that it's only homosexual people who abuse, and it only happens with little boys in the Catholic Church. And he said in all of his experience as a prosecutor, if we were to make a profile for such an offender, it would be a white heterosexual male married with kids and Christian. So I was like, wow. Sometimes we like to scapegoat and say this is, only homosexuals do this, or LGBTQ community, but the reality is not that.
yeah, in reality, we have to look at hard data, and what's
Yes, the data.
interesting. Yeah, what's interesting is that as you said, uh, data, potato,
Oh, data. Sorry. Okay.
potato, potato.
But by the way, it's plural, right?
Yeah, I know it's true.
Data is plural. Data is plural.
Yeah, because
These
it's
these
yeah,
data.
I know a bit of Latin, and the singular is datum.
Right.
So
Oh, very good.
okay, yeah. So the data. it's still hidden from most of us, and it allows us to keep going, you know, day by day, the way we think things should happen. And in reality, and I repeat, on a long run, we don't realize that alongside hurting people, certain people,
We're hurting ourselves, right?
yeah, and
That's what's
the church is to repeat something that I said earlier. The church is indeed consequential, but not the way we present the church's mandate as having to be. It's consequential in that it affects people's lives, and this is so important to for all of us to get information, to know what we are talking about, instead of just you know, preaching high values and rigid traditions and stuff like that.
So it's a bit easier now with people putting things online, everything being online now, including court records. I mean, we have a research program, I'll just finish with this, where we will be collecting these data. You know, some reports are not out there, but many are in the media. So that's the first phase of research. We're looking at cases from the reported in the media, and then we're looking at court records as well, because that's all online too. Unless they seal the records, it's on there. And then there are more and more people, because there's an awareness about it, more and more people speaking online, blurring it online, so you can you know, reach out to them as well. And obviously that requires an IRB approval to speak to some of these who were individuals who were victimized. But with those three phases, we can get an idea of some data of the breadth and depth of the issue. And only that is just a little tiny bit, because most people who were victimized do not report anywhere, because there's this shame, and we have to switch that. You know, they have to let go of this shame and speak up, because it's obviously, sometimes I understand they cannot, because it's just such a traumatic experience. But we have to expose this cancer in our church, because it's the only way to heal it, right? It's like I said in my sermon, even Christ showed his wounds. He showed his wounds. So we have to also expose this wound if we want to heal the church.
And the word is healing for those affected and for the entire body of Christ. Thank you very much, Hermina. This has been very illuminating and also troubling on a number of levels.
It was a pleasure. We talk from art to all kinds of topics.
And yeah.
But there is always one focus, right, Doru? And that is, we are curious to finding and discovering what the truth is. We have to keep walking in that truth.
And realizing how consequential that truth is. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
All the best.